How is it going, guys? And welcome back to a new episode here with some Pod Limit Oma content on my YouTube channel. Jumping immediately into the action, playing two tables on GG Poker, playing PLO 100. And if you guys like this content, then make sure to give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and also check out PLOmastermind.com if you want to learn more about Pod Limit Oma and also stay up to date on our upcoming event leading up to Black Friday later this November. We're going to run a 3-day event, which is accessible completely for free to all of you, in which we're going to talk about how to succeed playing poker in 2025. If you want to make sure to get access to that event, click on the link below, sign up to the PLO Mastermind Playbook, and you will learn exactly what you can do and when the event is running. Table number 1, I defend King 7-6-6, and we're definitely checking back on this flop. We flop a straight, but we have the third nut straight. We want to keep the pot small on the flop. We don't want to bet, first of all, risk facing a check raise, but also if we bet, it's not a hand that I can value bet for multiple streets. So I rather keep the pot small on the flop and then get my value on later streets and also allow my opponent to bluff potentially on the turn or on the river. So I bet a turn, he calls, and on the river I bet half pot. My opponent unfortunately folds. We do take down the pot, while on table number 2, somehow we ended up with quad 7s, and we win a nice pot there as well. That's a good start of the session, guys. Hope you're all doing well. Let me know in the comments what you have been up to, if you've been playing a lot, studying a lot, what games are you currently in. Well, I'll pick up King, Queen, Queen 6 single suited on table number 2 against a button open in the small blind. I decide to fold with the hand in question over here. And let's take a look using PLO Trainer to see if this fold actually makes sense. So I'm going to use PLO Trainer. This is the pre-flop 100 big blind solution exactly for GG Poker. You can see this on the top left saying 6max GG Poker. Now you can access this pre-flop solution completely for free, guys, by creating a free account at PLOmastermind.com. Study and learn and practice as much as you want to improve your pre-flop game as we speak. So make sure to give it a go. The button highlighted in green is the active player right now. I'm going to click on pot and now go to the small blind. Small blind now highlighted in green. And we see the response for the small blind against the button open raise at 100 big blinds. Now, this is the exact same profile as we're playing in, PLO 50 up to PLO 200 on GG. The rake is the same, so therefore we are grouping that together. On the right side, we see that we are supposed to 3-bet 9.2% against the button raise. And the question is, what queens are we supposed to 3-bet? What queens are we supposed to call? And which are we folding? I decided to fold King, Queen, Queen 6 single. So what I do is I go to categories on the right side of range. We have the range view, which basically displays all the hands in our range. And then categories is another view mode that we have in PLO Trainer. And here we are grouping hands together with similar characteristics. And based on those similar characteristics, it's more easy for you as a user to find trends and patterns. So let's take a look. We have these 9 overarching categories, and we're looking for single suited queens. So this is a 1-pair hand in the middle. And this is a 1-pair single-suited hand. 23.51% of the time, we have a single-suited 1-pair hand in our range. And this range is 3-betting 14% of the time and calling only 6%. So let's open this one up. And we're going to look at the different hand classes in there. We have aces, of course, 3-betting 97% of the time, not a surprise. And then Broadway pairs, 3-betting 21% and calling 16%. If I open this one up further, we do see the last level of these categories where we break it down even more in depth. If we specifically focus on kings and queens over here, 25% 3-bet, 20% call. So let's open this one up, filter for it, and now we are displaying only kings and queens that are single suited. On the right side, we see the 3-bets. For example, King, King, Jack 10 is a 3-bet, a very strong hand. King, King, Queen 9 as well. King, King, Jack 8. So a lot of kings are 3-betting. But what about Queen, Queen? So let me filter for Queen, Queen. And Queen, Queen, we do have some 3-bets. A hand like King, Queen, Queen 10. Queen, Queen, 10, 9. Like those are the 3-bets. And in the middle, we find the calls. And the calls are a little bit weaker, but still good enough to play. A hand like Queen, Queen, Jack 9 triple suited or Queen, Queen, Jack 8 single is a call. But other than that, we do see very, very many folds in our range, like 80% folds on the left side. If I filter for King, Queen, Queen, we see 52% of the time we are folding. We do have some calls in the middle, including a hand like King, Queen, Queen 8, and also a hand like King, Queen, Queen 6. So apparently my exact combination is supposed to be a call. The value of calling, which is what we can see under EV, is very, very marginal of, for example, King, Queen, Queen 6. Our investment is 0.5 big blinds, so folding equals minus 0.5 big blinds. And we do see that with the call, we're pretty much breaking even to folding, so we cannot expect to win a lot of money if we would decide to call. And therefore, I think folding in reality is completely fine. Yes, calling is also reasonable and in some way profitable, but it's very, very marginal. So not a big mistake in that sense, but definitely interesting to see that a hand like this is good enough to play. Maybe even against this player who's playing 50% VPIP so far, this hand actually becomes a much stronger call or potential 3-bet even. Okay, that was a start with some analysis, guys. We do want to try to keep improving every session that we play, of course. I think that is definitely the goal. Whenever we play or study, right? Whenever we know that we are improving, it should all be good. And whenever we are playing and try to make the best decisions that we can at this moment, like that is pretty much all we can do. Accept that we're not perfect, accept we're going to make a lot of mistakes. And basically take it from there. Ace 10, 4, 3 double. Table number 2, definitely a hand that I want to play. Open raising. And we do take it down pre-flop. Then we have King, Queen, Jack, 10 single against a raise and a 3-bet. Like, let me actually go like here on the left side. Like, this might be tempting to come in for a call. But we have to realize that we're A, up against a MP range, who's usually quite tight. And B, we face a 3-bet against that range, and that's also usually a strong range. When you think about our calling range here, like this hand is somewhat reasonable, but at the same time, like the suits and like the high card strength even, like very often we're going to be dominated by ace high suits, by a hand like ace king queen, by aces, by kings, by pairs basically, high pairs with strong connectivity. And therefore our hand, especially in a high rake environment, is not performing as amazing. Let's go back to PLO Trainer for a brief moment. Go to this scenario. So MP raises, cut off 3-bets. And now we're going to look at the button response against these actions. And maybe surprising, guys, we're only calling 0.9%. So we're pretty much never calling. We're 4-betting 3.5%, and we're folding 95.6%. So we are very, very selective with the calls in our range. And a big reason for this is because of the high rake. We're playing low stakes, PLO 100, where the rake is relatively high. And whenever the rake is high, we have to be selective with our passive pre-flop actions because we're guaranteed to pay the rake here. So what we can see now is that we're calling very, very selective, only 0.9%. If we scroll through the hand, we see double suited, double paired hands that are playable and strong enough, but not strong enough to 4-bet because we don't have an ace. For example, Queen, Queen, 9-9 or King, King, 3-3. If we scroll back further, Jack, Jack, 10-10, single. But you will see that we are holding very little single-suited hands, basically. The biggest part of this range is double-suited hands. We have some hands like ace, king, king, 10 single. That's good enough. But other than that, we are looking at a lot of double-suited hands, basically. Now, let's filter for king, queen, jack, 10. What is it that we see? Well, if we're double-suited, we can call. Our hand is good enough, so 2 suits matters a lot. But if we are single-suited, which I will filter for right now on the left side, we are supposed to make the fold. Now, let's take a look into how costly a mistake this would be if I would decide to call. Let's filter specifically for a hand that has like 2 high suits, or like a high suit, basically, the king high suit. In green, we see the EV difference. And the EV difference tells us something of how much better this action is in comparison to the next possible action. So folding, which is of course 0 big blinds in expected value because we don't invest anything, we're just going to fold, is 1.47 big blinds per hand better than the next possible best action. In other words, if we would decide to call, we're going to lose 1.47 big blinds more than folding in this situation. So that would be a very costly mistake, especially when you think about the fact that 1.47 big blind per hand equals to 147 big blinds per 100 hands, which is usually what we refer to when we think about win rates. So important to make the fold, and more important, be very selective with the hands that we're calling. Primarily focus on very strongly connected double-suited hands that are just not strong enough to come in for a call, or just not strong enough basically to come in for a 4-bet. Luckily, I do end up folding. And on table number 2, I open raise faces squeeze. We're definitely calling in position. Table number 1, kind of interesting. We open raise queen 9 7 5 double. Like, this is a pretty marginal open, but we have like a couple of tighter yellow players on my left, so I think open raising is okay. And against a 3-bet, we have to consider that we will have some 4-bet bluffs in our range. When we 4-bet, we're 4-betting aces. And we need some 4-bet bluffs. And primarily those 4-bet bluffs, they unblock our opponent's 3-bet folding range. For example, king, king. And this hand is definitely reasonable, I would say. Now, the problem here is that my opponent is only playing 17% VPIP, so it's more likely that he's very tight. And therefore, I'm not sure whether this is a potential 4-bet. So let's open up PLO Trainer. Let's first of all look into the middle positions RFI range and see if this hand is actually an open. And the answer is actually no, which is a little bit surprising to me. Like, queen 9 7 5 is a fold, and we're losing 0.1 big blind by open raising. So definitely significant enough, I would say, that it's important not to raise it. So a little bit surprising to me. Now, if we make the hand a little bit better, queen 9 7 6, like this hand is a raise. What about a hand like queen 9 6 5? That's also a raise. So we do see that similar hands are raising, and it's very close. But I definitely overvalued the hand a little bit, even though I was aware that it's a marginal hand. So let's go to the next action, which is what are my 4-bet bluffs from middle position against the button raise? We're 4-betting 16.2%. And if I would remove all the pairs from my range and all the hands that do have an ace and all the hands that do have a king, but we have a queen high double-suited rundown basically on the right side, we do see that we have some 4-bet bluffs. A hand like queen 10 9 8 double is a 4-bet. Queen 10 8 6 is a 4-bet. A hand like queen 9 8 6 double is a 4-bet. So very similar hands sometimes like to 4-bet. Also a hand like queen 9 6 5 even, like this hand, is a 4-bet bluff. And therefore, I mean, we don't have queen 9 7 5 in our range because we're folding at preflop. But if we go back to these types of hands, like, we do see a pattern where like similar-ish holdings are 4-betting. So I think the idea of 4-betting this hand or this type of hand is pretty good. The problem with this one is that this is somehow a little bit too marginal in the first place with the open raise. Now let's go back to the hand in question where I do face the 3-bet, and I did decide to come over the top with a 4-bet bluff. Unfortunately, my opponent quickly gets the money in, and of course, we are up against aces. Unfortunately, he flops top set. Luckily, we do have a flush draw. Let's see if we can get there. The deuce on the turn. 15% equity. A couple of outs. Let's do it. Unfortunately, we don't. And we lose the first big pot of the session in this 4-bet all-in scenario. So pretty interesting, I would say. The fact that these types of hands are capable of 4-bet bluffing, but that my hand pre-flop is just a little bit too marginal, and I should just fold that hand immediately. Table number 2, in the meantime, I flop a boat. Flop goes check, check, turn, I bet small, which I think is reasonable. We could also size up, but I try to keep his range wide. Maybe let him do something tricky, basically. Unfortunately, he doesn't bite on the river, but we do take down that pot. Table number 1, in the meantime, it's a cash draw pot. Flop goes check, check. Turn is the 8. Not an amazing card. Let's hope the action goes check, check again on the turn. And against a bet, we definitely have to fold. Table number 2, I do ended up folding with my double-suited queen high rundown. And table number 1, we do lose the pot. Ace, king, king, 8, rainbow. Table 2, easy defend. I'm not going to 3-bet this specific hand. It's a little bit too weak to 3-bet, I would say, so I just like to call. Turn, I'm going to call as well against a large bet. And table number 1, we flop top pair against a half pot size bet. Table 2, I decided to check back I do have showdown value against the queen, against queen 10. Unfortunately, he does river a straight, and he does take it down. Table 1, I decide to turn my hand into a bluff by check raising. I think that is reasonable. Usually, I prefer to do this with a hand that does have a pair in it as well. And the reason why a hand with a pair is a little bit better is because there are then some turns that you can turn really strong equity if you improve to a boat, which is not possible with my hand, especially because the board is paired. So it's a little bit more questionable, I would say. Table 1, I decide to 3-bet. Table 2, I'm getting involved with my queen high single suited rundown and the cash draw pot. A lot of that money in the middle. Table number 1, I bet the flop on a6-4. Now, this is not the best ace-high board for my 3-betting range, simply because the two side cards, the 6 and the 4, they don't connect with my range that well. But at the same time, we have to consider that my opponent, who is in middle position, will also not connect very well to the 6 and the 4, making it a little bit better and therefore more favorable, or a lot more favorable for myself, especially because I have all the aces in my range. So I can do a lot of betting on this board. And if I would open up PLO Trainer and take a look into a similar board texture, a6-5 I have available here with a flush draw, we do see that 89.5% of the time we are supposed to bet. Take a look into a hand like ace, king, jack 4, which is somewhat similar. Without a flush draw, we do see that 91.8% of the time we're betting, and I think simplifying to betting all of these combinations is probably the way to go. Let's see what happens. I bet, while on table number 2, I turn 2 pair, the queen and the 9. Pretty nice. Let's see if we can get to showdown there. We're not too thrilled if one of the players would bet. Table number 1, one of the worst turns in the deck. Straight completes, but also the flush gets there. So we're going to check. And if my opponent bets, unfortunately, we do have to fold, which is what happens. And table 2, in the meantime, I did a win with 2 pair, which is nice in the cash draw pot. Ace, queen, 10, deuce, double in the meantime on table number 2. I could 3-bet against the button. I'm probably going to call if early position raises or middle position, which is what happens here. Also, the big blind, I do want to get him involved with a 64 VPIP. Beautiful flop. Almost a hand to check because we have such an overkill to the board. But the fact that my opponents can still have an ace or the nut flush draw, I think, makes it a little bit more appealing to come in for a bet on the flop. If I would have the same hand with the nut flush draw, I would definitely consider to slow play. Turn, easy bet. Trying to get value from an ace. Trying to get value from the nut flush draw somehow. Unfortunately, my opponent does fold, and we take it down. And we don't want to see a 3-bet with this hand, because then we do have to fold. But luckily, we take it down pre-flop. King 8, 7-5 double. Table number 2 will definitely be a hand that is playable in many situations. We're 3-betting big blind versus small blind. I think that is that's okay. We can also call. But blind versus blind, you can definitely 3-bet wider than, for example, button against the cutoff. Okay. We bet small. He calls. Turn, check, check. I think that's reasonable. We could also bet the turn. We have a very, very straightforward bet. And my opponent folds. Table 1, in the meantime, I do take it down with top 2 pair. I didn't exactly follow the action, but that's fine. Double suited kings in the big blind. Beautiful hand. An ace, king, queen, 4 rainbow. Table number 2. Defendable against the small blind steal. Defendable against the button steal. But against the cutoff, I'm going to fold. And king, king, 7-7 double. Table number 1. Definitely 3-betting. Beautiful hand. Against 4 bette. Ace, ace, 5. Decent board for my 3-betting range. I'm going to start with a small bet. Something like $5, $6. I go for 4.5. I think that's also okay. Pretty bad turn. Bringing in the flush. I'm going to check. And table number 2 in the meantime. Table 2 is one of those hand types that we definitely want to bet. Now, betting a hand like this is not necessarily for value because King Jack is not strong enough to bet for value on this street, especially on this board. The reason we're betting is to generate fold equity. We want to pressure on our opponent. We want to deny equity. We want to put him out of the pot. And we do that with a hand that has blockers and future blockers. So we have the jack and we have the sevens, which function as blockers to straight draws and blockers on future runouts to potential straights. So this is one of those hands that you definitely want to start betting with on the flop. And if you get check raised, it is what it is, but you just have to fold. Table 1 in the meantime, check, check, turn. And on the river, we're checking again. My opponent does check back. And he shows up with a flush, and we lose. Ace, queen, 10, 6, triple on the button. And also ace, king, queen, queen. Table number 2. Interesting hand. I would 3-bet against this player, I think. He's so wide, 55 VPIP. And table 1, definitely defending the button against this loose passive player, 67 VPIP. And we do squeeze on table number 2, ace, king, queen, queen. And they fold. Table 1, I'm going to start with a bet. This is a pretty good board for my range. Players usually overfold also against the stab, so I'm going to start with a bet. And on this blank turn, I will keep firing, representing king, jack, or better. I expect a lot of fold equity on that specific turn. We do want to bet there. We have no showdown value, so if we check, we almost can't win. But we do have equity in case we get called in that situation. Also, don't expect to get check raised almost ever on the turn. Like sometimes, of course, it will happen, but not very often. And we do take it down there. Ace, queen, 10, 10, single. Table number 2. Gonna call. Although this player plays 64 VPIP, we could even consider to squeeze. I think squeezing here is pretty interesting, actually. I decide to call. I mean, it's okay, but squeezing a hand like this is definitely something to consider against the ranges in play. Jack 9, 8, 8. Table 1, easy open. And table 2, we're just going to check fold. 9, 9, 7, 6, double. Table number 1, going to call. Jack 9, 6, 5. Table 2, I like to fold. At table 1, I do defend. And on this turn, I think I have a reasonable candidate to bet. Can deny equity. I can represent the 3 or the deuce, which my opponent will not have very often. And we do take it down. King, king, jack 3. Table number 2, easy open from middle position. And we do take it down. King, king, 4, deuce, easy open. And ace 6, 5, 3. Table number 1. I will open raise that one on the button. We do get a call. Flopping a rep. Interesting. We can bet, we can check. I like to check a little bit more, just because we don't have a flush draw or a backdoor flush draw or a heart. Sort of a heuristic to make sure that I have some checks. If I bet, I get raised. It's also not great. Reason for betting is if my opponent would overfold, for example, on the flop, then we generate more fold equity and the bet instantly becomes more profitable. On the river, as played, I think we do have to bluff. It's not a great spot, but I think we're going to try it. My opponent shows up with king, king, 8, deuce. And that's going to wrap up this session, guys. Hope you did enjoy it. If you do so, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and check out PLO mastermind.com if you want to learn more about pot limit OMA.